When I think of a sex offender, honestly what comes to mind is an old man, possibly a priest.
And probably like that stereotypical creepy guy in a white van.
Obviously an older person who's had like sexual relations with somebody who is underage.
Someone who engages in, I guess, taboo sexual activities.
Someone, peeing outside and being put on a sex offender list.
I'm thinking about the choice and sort of what comes to mind when a sex offender, acts on it.
I think it's complicated, definitely.
I think the community views me as, some people view me at least as a horrible person, because they don't know the whole story.
People have a visceral reaction to people who've committed sexual offenses. In some ways, it's considered socially more unacceptable than a whole host of other crimes. They end up being considered often a pariah, people that are simply not welcome back in the community again.
According to the Sex Offender Registry Program, there are 23,140 registered sex offenders in the state of Wisconsin, including 489 in Outagamie County alone. Many of these individuals will face difficulty reintegrating into their communities because they forever carry the stigma of being labeled a sex offender, even as the term covers a wide range of different crimes.
All sexual offenders are not the same. Some of them are people who commit rape and violent crimes. Some of them are people, as I described earlier, who have had a relationship with somebody who's a minor, and that can be just 2 years apart. If you've got somebody who's 19 years old and they've had a relationship with a 16 or a 17-year-old, and if the court adjudicates that that was in fact the sex with a minor, when they return they have the same label as sexual predator as somebody who's offended as a serial pedophile.
What happened was about 2 years ago now, I went to a party and got drunk, and this girl told me she was 16, ended up being like 13 or 12, and got in trouble for that. Got charged with second-degree sexual assault of a child.
Many of these folks have been shunned by their families, so it's not like returning from a vacation and you're welcomed with open arms by your family, because very often the people who've been offended are people who live in that household.
A lot of my friends don't even know if they can trust me anymore, and it's hard meeting new people, telling them my story. A lot of them don't believe it. They think that I'm like some sex offender that wants to like rape kids and stuff, and no one understands, but it's about, yeah. And then family, it's part of my family doesn't talk to me anymore. They think that I've completely changed into like a horrible person that just goes along and looks at kids, and it's just horrible.
Many counties throughout the country have passed ordinances restricting where sex offenders can live. These ordinances may also order sex offenders to stay away from schools, parks, and daycare centers.
With Outagamie County having very few sex offender ordinances, it allows us as agents to really do our jobs as far as focusing more on treatment and compliance, rather than having to focus on where are these guys going to stay every night, and dealing with their anxiety of where do I go after 5 days. And we really think the community is safer that way.
In regard to the efficiency or the effectiveness of ordinances, there's no studies that have shown that they would have stopped a sexual assault, and no data exists or study has shown that they would prevent another one. There were 2 studies done at the University of Minnesota, one just done out of the state of Michigan as well, that questioned the effectiveness of not just residency restrictions, but safety zones as well, or sex offender ordinances in general.
I don't really have much going for me anymore. I can't do a lot, but just go to school and build up motivation somehow. I've applied at all sorts of restaurants like KFC, McDonald's. No one calls me back, and I mean, my 15-year-old brother got a job before I could.
In regard to the isolation factor, one of the things that data shows is if we can occupy 80 to 84% of a person's time, it shows that recidivism lowers. So one thing that agents focus on, or treatment providers, is keeping that person involved with pro-social peers, positive family members, groups, support groups, employment, education. And anything that you take a look at the general population that does day to day and get them acting pro-social again and feeling good about themselves rather than letting the negative and inadequate feelings start to creep in. And that's another thing that they have to keep in mind, is a positive self-esteem too.
It's really hard. I mean, I don't know many people that'd be able to handle themselves after being labeled a sex offender. I did meet a kid recently at the bus station, and he told me all about his case, exact same thing, literally. And he told me, you know, about some churches to go to and all that stuff. Can't really go to a church and say, hey, I'm a sex offender and all that stuff, because they all look at you like you're a horrible person.
With second-degree sexual assault of a child specifically, the statute language reads that the victim is between the ages of 13 and 15. However, it gives absolutely no idea to the public how old the offender is. So in the state of Wisconsin at 17, an offender is treated as an adult.
I was 17 years old, and originally I was in a normal block and with normal, like, people that had theft and stuff like that, but then I got labeled a sex offender, and then I also had to sit some time in jail, and everyone in jail just hates you then. I mean, you get put in a sex offender block with a bunch of actual, like, pretty scary people that look at you like you're some hot meat, and you just get picked on, you get bullied like crazy, and it's horrible. It's pretty bad. I don't think it helps anyone at all when you get put into a block with actual sex offenders that, like, really go after kids, you know. I think that's way overboard.
I think what we don't do a very good job is understanding root cause and treatment. We don't do a very good job of trying to imagine a restorative process that helps deal with folks who've offended, as opposed to a retributive process that deals with people who've been offended.
I would encourage everyone in the community to utilize their resources. One of those resources specifically is the Sex Offender Registry. I would caution that it's really hard to tell what an offender did based on the legal jargon related to the conviction. So I always welcome a phone call from a potential landlord or a neighbor to ask or to educate, you know, what should I be looking for? What risk factors should I be looking for? What are the rules that this person has to follow? The department is always willing to make those collateral contacts and looking to educate the public and make them part of the partner.
What do you want the community to know about you?
Well, I want them to know that I'm not some scary sex offender, you know, like typical stereotype of some sex offender that goes around, you know, looking for kids and whatnot. I'm not like that at all. I just made a mistake a while back, and just labeled for it now, I guess.